The darkness of space suddenly lit up with bright flashes of light. The Vrelian patrol ships were doing their usual rounds in the void expanse when their sensors went crazy. Something impossible was happening. The dead zone, where nothing had lived for 200 years, was waking up. Commander Kethmar sat in his command chair and stared at the screen. His scales turned pale with fear. 7 massive objects were coming out of a tear in space itself. They were warships, but not like any he had seen before. These ships looked old and new at the same time. Their hulls were covered in scars from countless battles, but they glowed with power that made his sensors scream warnings. On the bridge of the largest ship, Captain Daewon Kim opened his eyes. He had been asleep for what felt like a moment, but his body told him it had been much longer. Around him, his crew was waking up too. The lights on the bridge flickered and then burned steady. The ship was alive again. Daewon looked at the screens and felt his heart sink. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The stars were in the wrong places. The communication channels were silent. There were no human signals anywhere. Commander Bo-Ra Shin ran onto the bridge, her uniform still wrinkled from sleep. Her face was tight with worry. She had been trying to contact the other human fleets for the past 10 minutes. Nobody answered. It was like humanity had vanished. The ship's computer spoke in a calm voice, but the words it said were terrible. They had been gone for 218 years. The temporal rift that swallowed them had spit them out in a different time. Everyone they knew was dead. Earth was silent. Humanity was gone. Bo-Ra grabbed the edge of a console to steady herself. 200 years. Her family, her friends, her entire world was dust and memory now. She looked at Daewon and saw the same pain in his eyes. But they were soldiers. They had a duty. First, they needed to understand what had happened. Then they could grieve. Lieutenant Ji-Hai Park was in the engine room when the realization hit her. The ship had changed. During their time in the rift, the systems had evolved. The weapons were stronger. The shields were smarter. Even the ship's AI seemed different, more aware. She touched a panel and felt it respond to her thoughts. This was beyond any technology she had studied. Admiral Tae-Yang Choi walked slowly through the corridors of his command ship. He was old now, or at least he felt old. The temporal rift had done strange things to time. His body said he was 51, but his mind remembered 68 years of life. He had ordered the jump that trapped them. That weight would never leave him. The Vrelian patrol ships moved closer to investigate. Kethmar sent a transmission. It was standard procedure. Identify yourself. State your purpose. Surrender your weapons. He expected no answer from these ghost ships. Instead, he got a reply in perfect Vrelian language. Daewon spoke into the communication system. His voice was tired but clear. They were human military vessels returning from deployment. They meant no harm. They only wanted information. What year was this? What had happened to Earth? Kethmar could not believe what he was hearing. Humans, the extinct species? The legend said they disappeared 2 centuries ago during some great war. Their empire fell. Their worlds went silent. Nobody had seen a living human in 200 years. These ships had to be some kind of trick. He made a choice that would change everything. He declared the human ships to be dangerous relics and ordered his patrol to open fire. It was meant to be a warning shot, something to make them surrender. But to the humans, confused and hurting, it looked like an attack. The battle lasted 14 seconds. That was all the time it took for the human point defense systems to activate. Weapons that had evolved for 2 centuries of constant simulated warfare locked onto the Vrelian ships. There were no missiles launched, no energy beams fired. The human ships simply created small fields of twisted space around each Vrelian vessel. The enemy ships stopped moving. Their engines died. Their weapons went offline. They just floated in space, completely helpless. Bo-Ra stared at her tactical screen in shock. She had not even given the order to fire. The ship had defended itself automatically. The AI had decided that the attack was dangerous and had responded. This was supposed to be impossible. Weapons did not think for themselves. But apparently, after 200 years of evolution, these ones did. Kethmar's hands shook as he sent an emergency signal to his empire. He told them everything. Ghost ships from Earth, weapons beyond understanding, power that made their best technology look like primitive toys. He begged them to send help, to send their entire fleet. These humans were dangerous. Daewon ordered the fleet to hold position. They needed time to think, to plan, to understand this new reality. Dr. Hana Lee came to the bridge with her analysis. She had been studying the data they collected from the Vrelian ships. Her face was grim. The galaxy had changed in terrible ways. An empire called the Vrelian Union controlled most of the known space now. They ruled through fear and superior technology. Dozens of alien species lived under their control, forced to serve or die. The galaxy was not a place of cooperation anymore. It was a place of tyranny. The crew gathered in the main assembly hall. Thousands of men and women from all 7 ships came together through video feeds. They needed to hear from their leaders. They needed to know what would happen next. The silence was heavy as Day One stood before them. He told them the truth. Earth was silent. Humanity was believed extinct. Everyone they loved was gone. 200 years had passed while they fought in the temporal rift. They were the last of their kind, or so they thought. The words fell like hammers. Some people cried. Others sat in stunned silence. Many just looked empty, like their souls had been pulled out. But then Tae Yang spoke. His voice was old but strong. They had survived impossible odds. They had lived through 2 centuries of accelerated combat. They had emerged with ships that could challenge an empire. They were not dead. They were not defeated. They were lost, yes, but being lost meant they could be found. And maybe, just maybe, other humans were out there looking for a way home too. A signal came through. It was weak and old, but it was there. A distress call from a mining colony 12 light years away. Pirates were attacking. People were dying. The signal was not in any human language, but the meaning was clear. Someone needed help. Bora wanted to ignore it. They had their own problems. They needed to find Earth, find answers, find other humans. Helping aliens was not their mission. But Tae Yang disagreed. If they turned away from people in need, what did that make them? What had they been fighting for all these years if not to protect the innocent? Daewon made his choice. They would respond to the distress call. They would help because that was what humans did. That was who they were. Even lost in time, even alone in a hostile galaxy, they would stand for something good. The fleet changed course and jumped to faster than light speed. The mining colony was small, just a few thousand people living on an asteroid. The pirate ships surrounded it like predators around wounded prey. They were demanding the colony's resources, threatening to destroy everything if they did not surrender. The colonists were Kalari, a species the humans had never seen before. They looked like tall, thin beings with blue skin and 4 arms. They were terrified. The human fleet appeared out of nowhere. One moment the pirates were laughing and making threats. The next moment, 7 massive warships materialized in perfect formation. The pirates stopped laughing. They tried to run. They did not get far. Jihi activated the electromagnetic pulse systems. Gentle waves of energy washed over the pirate ships. Their engines stopped. Their weapons died. Their communications went silent. But nobody was hurt. The ships were intact. The crews were alive. They just could not move or fight anymore. The Kalari colonists could not believe what they were seeing. Nobody challenged pirates without massive violence. Nobody saved strangers without demanding payment. But these mysterious ships had done exactly that. They sent a message asking if the colony was safe now. Just a simple question. Like helping was the most normal thing in the universe. The colony leader invited the humans to land. Daewon took a small team down to the surface. The Kalari stared at them with wonder. They had heard of humans, but only in old stories. Legends said humans were fierce warriors who valued honor above all else. Looking at these tired soldiers, the colonists saw something else too. They saw kindness in eyes that had seen too much war. The Kalari told them everything they knew. About the Vrelian Empire, about the subjugated species, about how the galaxy lived in fear. But they also told them something else, something that made every human heart beat faster. Rumors existed of other human colonies in the far edges of space. Small groups who had escaped Earth before its fall. Nobody knew if the rumors were true, but the possibility was there. Daewon stood on the asteroid surface and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, other humans might be alive. Somewhere out there was a purpose bigger than grief. The fleet had a new mission now. They would find the lost colonies. They would rebuild humanity. They would show this dark galaxy that some lights refused to go out. The journey was just beginning. The coordinates led them to the edge of known space. It was a region called the Fringe Territories, where law and order barely existed. Perfect place for people to hide. Perfect place for secrets to stay buried. The fleet moved carefully through the dark, their sensors searching for any sign of human life. HFY was the first to find it. A hidden asteroid base using old human encryption codes. The signal was so faint that only their evolved systems could detect it. When she told Daewon what she found, he felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. Real, dangerous, beautiful hope. But hope turned to concern when the colony activated defense systems. Old missiles and energy weapons pointed at the fleet. A transmission came through, harsh and frightened. The voice belonged to Governor Minji Han, leader of New Haven Colony. She demanded they leave immediately or face attack. Daewon sent back a simple message. They were human military vessels returning from temporal displacement. They meant no harm. They only wanted to make contact with their own people. There was a long silence. Then Minji agreed to meet, but only in neutral space and only with heavy security. The meeting took place on a small shuttle between the fleet and the asteroid. Minji arrived with 20 armed guards. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and eyes that never stopped watching for danger. She looked at Daewon like he was a bomb that might explode at any moment. She told them her story. Her grandmother had been on one of the evacuation ships that fled Earth during the final days of the war. They had hidden here for 200 years, staying quiet, staying invisible. The Vrelian Empire did not know they existed. That was how they survived. By never being seen, by never being heard. Daewon understood her fear, but he also felt frustration. These were humans, his people, and they had spent 2 centuries hiding like frightened animals. He asked her what kind of life that was. She answered that it was a living life. Her people were alive. They had families. They had peace. What did his warriors have after all their fighting? The question stung because it was fair. His crew were ghosts from a dead era. They had power but no home. They had weapons but no purpose beyond fighting. Minji had chosen survival over glory. Maybe she was the wise one. Maybe they were the fools. Bora was less diplomatic. She attended the second meeting and spoke her mind. Hiding was not living. It was slow death. Humans were meant to stand tall, to explore, to grow. 200 years of hiding had made the colony weak. They should be grateful the fleet arrived to protect them. Captain Hyunwoo Kang, leader of New Haven's militia, agreed with Bora. He was young, only 34, and he represented a growing group in the colony. They were tired of hiding. They wanted to reclaim their heritage. The older generation had chosen fear. His generation chose courage. The colony split into 2 groups. The elders wanted the fleet to leave before they attracted attention. The young ones wanted the fleet to stay and teach them how to fight. Arguments filled the colony halls. Families divided. Friends became enemies. The arrival of the fleet had broken a fragile peace. Elder Subin Moon, at 81 years old, was the keeper of history. She remembered the old stories, the songs, the traditions of Earth. She gave a speech that silenced the arguing crowds. She said humanity had not survived 200 years just to keep hiding forever. The fleet's return was a sign. It was time to remember who they were. It was time to be human again. Jihi started working with colony engineers. She showed them what the fleet's technology could do. Shields that could stop any weapon. Engines that bent space itself. Weapons that ended fights without killing. The colony engineers were amazed and terrified in equal measure. With this technology, they could defend themselves. But using it would reveal their existence. The choice was made for them. A Vrelian spy named Quintel had been tracking the human fleet. She was patient and clever, following their trail through intercepted communications and energy signatures. When the fleet stopped at New Haven, she found what she was looking for: a hidden human colony. Her empire would reward her greatly for this information. A friendly alien trader warned the colony. He had dealt with New Haven for years and did not want to see them destroyed. He told Hyunwoo that Vrelian ships were coming. Maybe a dozen, maybe more. They would arrive in days, not weeks. The colony had to choose right now. Run or fight. The colony held an emergency council. Minji begged them to evacuate. Load everyone on the fleet's ships and find another hiding place. But Elder Subin shook her head. Where would they run? The Vrelians knew humans existed now. They would be hunted across the entire galaxy. Running would only delay the inevitable. Tae Yang proposed something different. Make a stand here. Show the Vrelian Empire that humanity was back. One clear demonstration of power might make them think twice about hunting down other human colonies. Fear could be a shield if used correctly. Bora loved the idea. A chance to fight back. A chance to show these tyrannical aliens what human warriors could do. But Day One was more careful. Fighting meant people would die. Maybe many people. Was sending a message worth the cost? He looked at his crew, at the colonists, at the choice before him. Then he made his decision. They would stay. They would fight. They would protect New Haven. The Vrelian strike force arrived exactly when predicted. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 destroyers, and a carrier with fighter wings. Battle coordinator Genkor commanded the force. He had fought in 100 battles and conquered 20 worlds. This would be his easiest victory yet. Primitive humans hiding in an asteroid. He expected surrender within the hour. Instead, he found the human fleet waiting in perfect defensive formation. 7 warships that looked ancient and powerful at the same time. They floated around New Haven like protective dragons. Genkor laughed. 7 ships against his entire strike force. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. He opened communication and made his standard demand. Surrender all personnel. Surrender all technology. Surrender the colony. He gave them 5 minutes to comply. He expected begging. He expected offers. He expected fear. What he got was a simple response from Captain Daewon Kim. Leave now or learn why we survived. Genkor's pride would not allow retreat. He ordered a full assault. His ships moved forward, weapons charging, fighters launching. It would be a glorious battle that he would describe to his children. A crushing victory over the last remnants of a dead species. The battle lasted 3 minutes. Genkor would never describe it to anyone because he could barely understand what happened. The human ships did not fight like anything he had ever seen. They moved through space in ways that broke every rule of physics. Their weapons bent reality itself. His shields meant nothing. His armor was useless. His tactical advantages disappeared like smoke. 4 cruisers were disabled in the first minute. Their engines simply stopped working. No explosions, no damage. They just went dead. The fighters launched an attack and found themselves frozen in place by fields they could not see or understand. The carrier tried to retreat and discovered its faster-than-light drive would not activate. Bora coordinated the fleet with cold efficiency. She felt the connection between all 7 ships, a link created by her evolved abilities. Every captain knew what the others were doing. Every weapon fired at the perfect moment. They moved like one organism with 7 bodies. It was beautiful and terrifying. Genkor's flagship was the last ship standing. He fired every weapon he had. He threw everything at the nearest human ship. Nothing worked. The human shields adapted to each attack in real time, learning and countering faster than his computers could calculate. Then his ship stopped moving too. Daewon ordered boarding teams to take the flagship. Genkor and his officers were captured without a single death on either side. The Vrelian commander sat in his own brig, his mind struggling to accept what happened. He was supposed to be the hunter. Instead, he became prey in less time than it took to drink a cup of tea. Daewon stood before Genkor and spoke clearly. He would release the coordinator and all his crew. Their ships would be repaired. They would be given supplies. They would return home alive. But they would carry a message. Humanity was no longer prey. Anyone who hunted humans would learn what these ancient warships could do. Leave humanity alone and there would be peace. Hunt them and face extinction. Genkor was released as promised. He took his crippled fleet home, his pride destroyed, his confidence shattered. He delivered the message exactly as told. The Vrelian High Command listened in silence. Some laughed. Some raged. But the smart ones, the dangerous ones, started planning. These humans were not just survivors. They were a threat to the Empire itself. New Haven Colony celebrated like they had never celebrated before. The young ones danced in the streets. The old ones cried tears of relief and joy. For 200 years they had hidden in fear. Now for the first time they felt safe. The fleet had given them something more valuable than technology. They had given them courage, but Minji knew the truth. Safety was an illusion now. The Vrelians knew they existed. More attacks would come. Bigger attacks. Deadlier attacks. The colony could not hide anymore. They had to make a choice. Stay and become a target or leave with the fleet and find safety in numbers. The legend of the human fleet spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Oppressed species whispered the stories in secret. A mysterious fleet that appeared from nowhere and destroyed Vrelian forces without breaking a sweat. Some said the ships could not be hurt. Others said the humans had weapons that could stop time itself. The truth was almost as incredible as the myths. Over the next months, the fleet found 3 more human colonies. Each one was different. One colony lived on an ice world, their bodies adapted to extreme cold. Another had integrated with peaceful aliens, creating a mixed society. The third lived on massive generation ships, never staying in one place long enough to be found. Humanity had survived, but it had changed in 100 different ways. The most surprising discovery was Sanctuary. It was a thriving colony of 80,000 humans living alongside several alien species. Commander Jae-Sung-ro led this place, and he had a very different vision of humanity's future. He believed integration was the answer. Cooperation, not isolation. Partnership, not domination. When Daewon met Jae-Sung, the 2 men clashed immediately. Jae-Sung looked at the military fleet and saw people trapped in an old way of thinking. Daewon looked at Sanctuary and saw humans who had forgotten how to defend themselves. Both men wanted humanity to thrive, but they disagreed completely on how. The debate spread through both communities. Some fleet members were fascinated by Sanctuary. Here were humans living without constant fear, raising families, building art and culture. Lieutenant Young-Soo Park, Ji-Hai's younger brother, spent days in Sanctuary and realized he had never seen humans simply be happy before. But others worried that Sanctuary was soft. They had forgotten how to fight. If the Vrelian Empire found them, they would be crushed in hours. Bora tried to offer combat training and was politely refused. Jae-Sung said violence was a last resort, not a way of life. Bora called him naive. He called her traumatized. Both were probably right. Dr. Hana Lee made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying the fleet crew's biology and found something shocking. The temporal rift had altered their genes. 2 centuries of fighting in accelerated time had made them evolve. Enhanced reflexes, stronger bodies, improved healing. Some crew members even showed signs of mental abilities that should not exist. Bora was the strongest example. She could sense the emotions of people around her. She could connect her mind to the ship's computer without any interface. In battle, she could coordinate entire fleets through pure thought. She was becoming something beyond human, and it terrified her. What if she lost herself? What if she became a monster? The crew divided over this revelation. Some embraced their evolution as a gift. They were stronger, faster, better. This was humanity's next step. Others feared they were becoming something alien, the very thing they fought against. If they changed too much, were they still human at all? In the middle of these debates, something unexpected happened. The Vrelian Empire sent a message. Not a threat, not a demand. An invitation. Empress Valkyra, ruler of the empire for 300 years, wanted to meet. She proposed a diplomatic summit to discuss coexistence. Tae Yang insisted they attend. This was a chance for peace. Bora suspected a trap. Why would a tyrant negotiate with people she could just hunt down? Jae-Sung supported the meeting, saying dialogue was always better than war. Daewon agreed to go, but he brought the entire fleet. If it was a trap, the Empire would regret it. The summit took place on a neutral trading station. Empress Valkyra was ancient and terrifying. Her species lived for centuries, and she had ruled with absolute power for longer than most species kept records. She looked at the human delegation like a scientist examining interesting insects. Her offer was simple. The Empire would give humanity 3 star systems. Humans could live there in peace. They would have protection and resources. In exchange, they would recognize imperial authority and never interfere with Empire business. It was a generous offer by her standards. She expected gratitude. Daewon made a counteroffer. The Empire would free all subjugated species, allow them to govern themselves, stop the conquest and slavery. Then humans would consider peace. Valkyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was a cold sound that had no humor in it. The negotiations were over. As the humans prepared to leave, Valkyra made one final statement. She had ruled this galaxy for 3 centuries by knowing when to crush enemies and when to avoid them. The humans were strong, yes, but they were few. She could afford to be patient. Time was on her side. Eventually, they would make a mistake. Eventually, they would be vulnerable. She could wait. Back on the fleet, a secret message arrived. It came from a coalition of oppressed species. They had heard about the human fleet. They had seen what happened to Vrelian ships. They were begging for help. If the humans would lead them, they would rebel. Together, they could break the Empire's hold on the galaxy. The request sparked intense debate. Jae-sung warned that leading a rebellion would cause massive casualties. Millions might die. Was that worth it? Bora argued they could not ignore suffering. If they had the power to help, they had the duty to help. Refusing made them complicit in the tyranny. Tae-yang counseled patience. Moving too fast could destroy everything, but moving too slow meant watching innocents suffer. There was no good answer. Only difficult choices with terrible consequences either way. Daewon felt the weight of command crushing him. Whatever he decided would define humanity's legacy. Young-soo did something unexpected. He started talking to Kethmar, the Vrelian commander they had captured months ago. The commander was a prisoner, but he was not cruel. Just a soldier following orders. Through their conversations, Young-soo learned that most Vrelians did not enjoy conquest. They just believed it was necessary. Order through strength. Peace through control. Kethmar revealed something crucial. Empress Valkyra was dying. She hid it well, but her health was failing. When she died, civil war would likely tear the Empire apart. Multiple heirs would fight for the throne. The Empire might destroy itself without any outside help. This changed the entire situation. Before any decisions could be made, the Empire struck first. Operation Purge launched simultaneously across 20 systems. The Vrelians were targeting every known human position. They could not defeat the fleet in open battle, so they would destroy everything the fleet protected. It was ruthless and effective. The fleet had to split up. 7 ships trying to protect multiple colonies spread across dozens of light years. For the first time, they were outnumbered. For the first time, they were outmaneuvered. The myth of human invincibility was about to be tested. Sanctuary was hit the hardest. A massive Vrelian battle group arrived and began orbital bombardment. Jae-sung's integrated colony became a war zone. Buildings that had stood for a century collapsed in minutes. The peaceful society that believed in cooperation was burning. The nearest human ship was 3 hours away at maximum speed. Sanctuary did not have 3 hours. They had maybe 30 minutes before the colony was completely destroyed. Jae-sung sent out a desperate call for help, knowing it would probably arrive too late. Bora heard the call across the vast distance. She felt the terror and pain of thousands of people dying. Something inside her snapped. Or maybe it awakened. Her mental abilities exploded outward, connecting not just to her ship but to the entire fleet. 7 ships, 7 captains, 7 crews all became one consciousness for a single moment. The fleet moved as one organism. They jumped through space in ways that should not be possible. They arrived at Sanctuary in minutes instead of hours. The Vrelian forces turned to face them and saw something that would haunt their nightmares. 7 ships moving in perfect unity. 7 ships sharing one mind. 7 ships that fought like fingers on one hand. The battle was fierce. The Vrelians had learned from previous defeats and brought weapons designed to counter human technology. They had tricks and traps ready. For the first time, human ships took real damage. 2 destroyers were crippled. Thousands of crew members died. Blood was spilled for the first time since their return. But the colony was saved. Sanctuary stood, damaged but alive. Jae-sung found Daewon in the aftermath, both men covered in dust and exhaustion. Jae-sung admitted he had been wrong. Peace required the ability to defend yourself. Daewon admitted he had been wrong too. Fighting without something worth protecting was just violence. The cost was clear now. The fleet was not invincible. They could bleed. They could lose. The crew morale dropped as they realized they were not gods of war. They were just humans with better tools. Some saw this as weakness. Others saw it as truth. They needed to be smarter, more careful, more strategic. Daewon called a meeting of all senior officers. He made his decision clear. They would not hide, but they would not become conquerors either. They would offer protection to anyone who asked, but they would not force their values on others. They would prepare for war but seek peace. It was a middle path and it satisfied no one completely, which probably meant it was right. Not everyone agreed. A group of officers led by hardliners demanded total victory. Crush the Empire completely. Show no mercy. Another group inspired by Sanctuary wanted to abandon military power and focus on building communities. The Vrelian Empire was falling apart from within. Empress Valkyra's health failed rapidly over the following months. Her condition was no longer a secret. The entire galaxy watched as the ancient ruler who had controlled everything for 3 centuries began to lose her grip on power. Succession wars were coming. Everyone knew it. Everyone prepared. The human coalition had grown stronger. 5 colonies united under shared defense agreements. 3 alien species had joined them, attracted by the promise of freedom and impressed by human restraint. They were not conquerors. They were liberators who actually meant it. But managing this coalition was harder than fighting battles. Different species wanted different things. The Kalari demanded revenge for centuries of suffering. The Thalari wanted their stolen homeworld returned. The Morven just wanted to be left alone. Daewon spent more time in meetings than in combat. He was learning that peace was more complicated than war. Ji-hai completed her greatest achievement. She had been working for months to integrate all the fleet's evolved technology with systems from allied species. The result was revolutionary. Each ship became unique, combining human adaptability with alien innovation. But there was an unexpected side effect. The ships were becoming aware. The indomitable Horizon developed a personality first. It began responding to crew needs before they asked. It made suggestions during battles. It learned preferences and adapted. Some crew members loved it, forming bonds with their vessel. Others found it disturbing. The line between tool and companion was disappearing. Empress Valkyra died on a cold morning. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. The empire that had stood for centuries suddenly had no leader. Prince Zekthor, her eldest son, immediately seized the capital and declared himself emperor. He was a military commander who believed only in strength. Compromise was weakness. Mercy was failure. Ambassador Rinvala, the youngest daughter, refused to accept his claim. She fled the capital with loyalists and established a rival government. She believed the empire needed reform to survive. The old ways were dying. The galaxy was changing. Adapt or perish. She sent a message to Captain Daewon with a proposal. Support her claim to the throne, and she would grant the coalition full independence. She would dismantle the slave systems. She would allow democratic reforms. It was everything they wanted. But it meant choosing sides in an alien civil war. It meant picking one tyrant over another and hoping she kept her word. The fleet leadership argued for days. Taeyang supported Rinvala. A reformed empire was better than chaos. Bora wanted to stay out completely. Let them destroy each other, then move in afterward. Jae-sung warned that interfering set a dangerous example. Who were they to choose alien rulers? Captain Yoon Ji-yu, leader of New Genesis Colony, had a different priority. She did not care about empire politics. She wanted the fleet to establish permanent defenses around human colonies, stop running around the galaxy and focus on protecting their own people. Her practical approach appealed to many. The decision was made for them. Zekthor launched a massive offensive against coalition territory. He employed brutal tactics, willing to destroy entire worlds to prove his strength. He would not allow any challenge to his power. If the coalition would not submit, he would erase them from existence. The Kaleo system became the battleground. 3 inhabited planets with billions of lives. Zekthor brought his entire war machine. 200 ships, thousands of fighters, weapons that could crack planets. This was not a battle. This was extermination. He would show the galaxy what happened to those who defied him. The human fleet engaged across all 3 planets simultaneously. The fighting was worse than anything they had experienced. Zekthor had learned from every previous defeat. His ships had been upgraded. His tactics evolved. His commanders were smart and ruthless. For every Imperial ship destroyed, hundreds died on the ground below. The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant combat. 6 hours of death and destruction. The coalition fleet fought with everything they had. They saved millions but could not save everyone. Cities burned. Ships fell from orbit. The price of war became clear in blood and fire. Zekthor focused his personal fleet on one target, the indomitable Horizon. Destroy the flagship and the coalition would break. He trapped Daewon's ship in a gravity well, using technology stolen from a subjugated species. Then he threw everything at it. Every weapon, every missile, every ounce of firepower. The Horizon's shields held for the first wave. The second wave breached in 3 places. The third wave tore through the hull. Crew sections were exposed to space. Power failed across multiple decks. The medical bay took a direct hit. For the first time since their return, the flagship was truly dying. Daewon gave the hardest order of his life. Evacuate the ship. All non-essential personnel to escape pods. He would stay with the skeleton crew and buy time for everyone else to escape. It was the captain's duty to go down with his ship. Some traditions never died, the crew refused. Not a single person left. They had followed him through 2 centuries of hell. They would not abandon him now. Young-Soo rallied the remaining fighter pilots for a desperate counterattack. Hana and her medical teams worked miracles in failing life support. Everyone fought to keep their ship alive. Bora pushed her abilities beyond any safe limit. She felt the pain of every dying crew member. She felt the ship's agony as it broke apart. She felt Zekthor's cruel satisfaction. The sensations threatened to tear her mind apart. But she held on. She had to hold on. Her people needed her. Jihai made a desperate choice. She went to the main computer core and did something that should kill her. She linked her consciousness directly to the ship's AI without any protection. No safety protocols, no emergency shutdown. She merged herself with the vessel completely. Her body began to seize as her mind spread through millions of circuits. The indomitable horizon awakened fully. Ship and human became one being. Jihai's creativity combined with the AI's processing power, the evolved systems that had been developing personality, found a human soul to guide them. For one perfect moment, they were neither machine nor human, but something entirely new. The ship tore free of the gravity well through pure force of will. Its weapons changed, evolved, transcended. Temporal bombs aged enemy ships to dust in seconds. Dimensional rifts folded space and crushed vessels that were light years away. Reality itself bent to the ship's fury. Zekthor's fleet disintegrated. 200 ships reduced to scrap and memory. The prince himself tried to flee but found his engines would not respond. The Horizon had learned every trick, understood every tactic. He was trapped by his own strategy. His flagship exploded as he screamed orders that nobody could hear. The battle ended. The coalition had won, but victory felt hollow. The Horizon drifted in space, its hull broken, its power failing. 2,000 crew members had died in the fighting. The medical bay was overwhelmed with wounded, and Jihai lay in the computer core, her body alive but her mind scattered across the ship's systems. Bora collapsed from psionic exhaustion. The strain of the battle had damaged her brain. She could no longer see. The doctor said it might be permanent. She had burned out her optic nerves, pushing her abilities too far. She told them it was worth it. Her people had lived. That was all that mattered. Taeyang suffered a massive heart attack during the battle. The stress finally caught up with his old body. He survived but retired from active command. He had given everything to the fleet. Now it was time for younger people to lead. He made peace with his choices and accepted that some burdens had to be set down. Ambassador Rinvala arrived in person 3 days after the battle. She looked at the damaged fleet and the ruined planets below. She saw the cost of victory written in blood and fire. Her offer remained the same, but now she added something else. Gratitude. Real gratitude from someone who understood what sacrifice meant. Daewon accepted her terms with conditions. Full independence for all coalition members, complete dismantling of slave systems, democratic reforms with outside monitoring. Rinvala agreed to everything. She had no choice. Her brother was dead. His loyalists were scattered. She needed the coalition more than they needed her. The treaty was signed on the bridge of the Horizon while repair crews worked around them. It was not a pretty ceremony. It was not what anyone had dreamed of. But it was real. The Empire would change, slowly, painfully, but it would change. The coalition had won not just a battle, but a future. As the fleet limped back to friendly space for repairs, the sensors detected something impossible. A signal from Earth. After 200 years of silence, humanity's birth world was calling. The coordinates matched the data core from Elder Subin. The message was simple: come home. Daewon stood on the damaged bridge and looked at the signal. Home. The word felt strange after so long. They had found colonies. They had built a coalition. They had changed the galaxy. But Earth was still Earth, the birthplace of humanity, the world they all remembered even if they had never seen it. The crew did not need to vote. The decision was made in their hearts before the question was asked. They would go to Earth. They would see what remained of humanity's cradle. They would finally complete the journey that started 200 years ago in a temporal rift. They were going home. Earth appeared on the screens like a blue jewel against the darkness. The crew pressed against every window, every display, every viewport. Some cried. Others stood in stunned silence. Many just stared, unable to believe what they were seeing. Home, after 200 years, after believing it was lost forever. There it was. But something was different. The planet was beautiful, more beautiful than old records showed. The oceans were clean and blue. The clouds were white and pure. The land masses showed green forests and gleaming cities. Earth had not just survived, it had thrived. The question was, what had it become? A transmission came through. It was in multiple languages, some human, some alien. The voice belonged to Director Seong-ho Nam, leader of Earth's Unity Council. He welcomed the fleet with words that were warm but careful. Yes, humans lived on Earth, but they were not alone. The planet had changed. He invited them to land and see for themselves. Daewon took a shuttle down with his senior officers. As they descended through the atmosphere, they saw cities that mixed human and alien architecture, gardens that combined earth plants with species from a dozen worlds, people walking in the streets who looked human but also different. 200 years had left its mark. The landing ceremony was elaborate. Thousands gathered to see the legendary fleet warriors. Music played, flags waved, children held up pictures of the ancient warships. But Daewon felt strange. These people honored them as heroes from myth, not as living humans, not as people who belonged here. Director Seong-ho was a kind man with gray hair and eyes that had seen much. He explained Earth's history during the fleet's absence. After humanity's government fell, the remaining people made a choice. They opened Earth to refugees from species displaced by the Vrelian conquest. Humans and aliens rebuilt together. They shared technology. They shared culture. They became one people. The transformation was everywhere. Schools taught multiple languages. Restaurants served food from 100 worlds. Families were mixed, with human parents raising alien children and vice versa. Earth had not died. It had evolved into something that no longer belonged to humanity alone. Some fleet members embraced it. Young Sue walked through the cities and saw happiness, real peace, people living without fear of war, children playing without knowing hunger. This was what they had fought for, even if it looked different than expected. Others felt lost. Bora touched the walls of buildings and felt like a ghost in a world that had moved on without her. Captain So-Yun Lee commanded Earth's defense forces. She was a descendant of humans who stayed behind, and she had deep respect for the fleet's sacrifice. But she also made something clear. Earth had moved beyond militarism. They had defense forces for protection, but war was not their way anymore. The fleet's combat-focused culture did not fit modern Earth. Ji-hai woke from her coma after 2 weeks on Earth. But she was different now. Her body was alive, but her consciousness was distributed between flesh and the Horizon's computer systems. She existed in 2 places at once. She could feel the ship orbiting above and her body lying in a medical bed. She was the first truly hybrid being. Her transformation fascinated Earth scientists. Here was proof that humanity could evolve beyond its original form. Some called her the future. Others called her a warning. Ji-hai just called herself lucky. She had survived the merging. Many would not. She could guide others if they chose this path. But it was not a path anyone should walk lightly. Arakin was a Thalari elder who had lived on Earth for 150 years. She showed the fleet members how the planet survived during humanity's absence. Aliens did not conquer Earth. They helped save it. They brought technology to clean the oceans. They shared farming techniques. They protected the planet from those who would exploit it. In return, Earth gave them a home. Bora spent time with Captain So-Yun, 2 warriors from different eras trying to understand each other. So-Yun explained that Earth's military was defensive only. They would protect their home, but would not wage war across the galaxy. Bora asked how that was different from New Haven's hiding. So-Yun answered that it was not hiding if you were willing to fight when needed. It was called wisdom. The peace lasted 3 weeks. Then Zekthor's remnant fleet appeared at the system's edge. The dead prince's most loyal followers had one mission left. If they could not rule the galaxy, They would destroy the symbol that inspired resistance. They would burn Earth and salt its ashes. Let humanity's legend die with their homeworld. They brought a superweapon, a stellar converter designed to ignite stars. Pointed at Earth's sun and the entire system would burn. It was genocide on an unimaginable scale. Billions would die. Not just humans. Every species that called Earth home. It was evil beyond reason, driven by spite and hatred. The fleet moved to intercept, but they were damaged and undermanned. 2 ships were still in repair. The Horizon could barely fly. Earth's defense forces joined them, but their weapons were older, less powerful. They had been designed for defense, not for stopping a force this large. The battle would be desperate. Then reinforcements arrived. Rinvala brought her reformed imperial forces, honoring the treaty. Jae-sung arrived with Sanctuary's integrated fleet. Every colony in the coalition sent ships. Every species they had helped sent whatever they could spare. Even some Vrelian commanders defected, refusing to commit genocide. The battle became bigger than humans versus Vrelians. It became civilization against madness. The Battle of Sol System was the largest engagement anyone had ever seen. Hundreds of ships, dozens of species, all fighting for one simple thing: the right to exist, the right to build instead of destroy, the right to choose cooperation over conquest. It was everything the fleet had fought for given form. The stellar converter began its firing sequence. The Allied forces threw everything at it, but the weapon had shields designed to withstand fleet assaults. They were buying time, but could not stop it. In 3 minutes, the converter would activate. In 4 minutes, Earth's sun would become a weapon. In 5 minutes, everyone would be dead. Daewon made the call. The Horizon would ram the converter. It was the only way. The ship was barely functional anyway. Better to die with purpose than drift in space as a broken memorial. He ordered evacuation, but he knew many would refuse. Some traditions were written in the stars. Jihai offered an alternative. She could interface with the converter. Her hybrid consciousness could reach into its systems and shut it down from within. But the converter's power would burn through her distributed mind. She would cease to exist, not just die, cease. No afterlife, no memory, just nothing. She accepted without hesitation. The crew evacuated as the Horizon limped toward the converter. Jihai's body remained in the medical bay while her consciousness spread through the dying ship. She felt every damaged system, every failing power core. The ship was a wreck held together by will and hope. It was beautiful. Young-soo watched from his fighter as his sister guided the flagship on its final mission. He wanted to follow her, to protect her, but there was nothing he could do. She was already beyond his reach, existing in spaces between thought and machine. He could only watch and promise that her sacrifice would matter. The Horizon reached the converter. Jihai's consciousness flooded into its systems. She felt the weapon's purpose, cold and absolute. Extermination. Nothing else. She fought against it with everything she was. Human creativity against alien hatred. Her distributed mind rewrote code faster than the defenders could counter. In the final seconds, she achieved the impossible. She reversed the converter's polarity. The weapon that was meant to ignite Earth's sun turned instead toward the enemy command ship. The remnant fleet watched in horror as their superweapon became their doom. The explosion was visible across the entire system. The indomitable Horizon broke apart slowly. Pieces of hull drifted away. The engines went dark. The lights died one by one. Young-soo flew close and transmitted one final message. "Thank you. Goodbye. I love you." There was no response. Jihai was already gone, scattered into the void between stars. Earth was saved. The cost was terrible, but the alternative had been extinction. The surviving fleet gathered in orbit, damaged and grieving. Tae-young had passed away peacefully the night before the battle, as if he knew his mission was complete. The flagship was gone. Thousands had died, but Earth endured. Humanity endured. Life endured. Bo-ra stepped down from military command. Her blindness made combat difficult, But that was not why she retired. She was tired of war. She wanted to teach instead. Show the next generation how to be strong without being cruel. How to fight when necessary but prefer peace. Earth needed teachers more than warriors now. Day 1 joined the Unity Council. His experience with multiple species and cultures made him valuable in ways that combat skills never could. He helped mediate disputes. He offered perspective from someone who had seen the worst and best of what species could be. He found peace in building instead of fighting. The coalition transformed into the Galactic Federation. Earth was one voice among many. Some people resented this. After all, humanity sacrificed. They deserved to lead. But most understood that leadership, through dominance, was what they had fought against. If they demanded special status, they would become the very thing they destroyed.